Welcome back to another episode of Steel Connections, where we are unearthing industry insights. We're your hosts, Brandy Martin and Sean Juber of Instafab. And this week we're diving into quality and safety. But before we kind of dive into all the things that we got in store for our listeners today, Sean, do you want to give them an update about what we've been up to?
Oh my gosh. Well, since the last time we did this, oh my gosh, our last episode, we've had some pretty significant milestones. I'm so excited. I don't even know where to start, to be honest with you. I think, um, I
Well,
mean,
we
first, I go for it. I was going to say first and foremost, the award of best place to work.
yes, I
I
was going to
mean,
say the same thing.
how do you go, how do you go past that first?
Yeah. So, listeners, we were awarded Best Place to Work in 2023. And this is a huge milestone for Instafab because a year ago we were half the size we are today. And we wouldn't have even been considered last year. In fact, we were in a really, really bad spot. So, being nominated and all of our employees voting for us to rank really high and be named was a huge deal for us. And we accepted the award and the honors last night. So, it was a fun event.
I second that. I unfortunately I didn't get to attend the event, but I did see some pictures and videos, and it looks like you all had a very good time.
Yeah,
So,
they drug me up on stage
so
and we played weird games, but it was fun.
yeah, it looked interesting. I'm not sure what the basketball thing on your head was, but that looked pretty cool.
The thing kept slipping off my head, and I was like trying to make it so that he could make his balls into the hat. It was
Yeah,
weird.
he did well.
Not me.
Yeah, he did well. Well, I think he was focusing on the shot, and you were kind of like trying to get him to make it. I don't know. It worked out well though. You guys were a good team.
Yeah, yeah. Well, if I seem tired tonight, or if I do any stumbling, it's because it has been a whirlwind of a week. On top of that event, that ceremony yesterday, this is usually the week that we also do our employee owners monthly report. It's like a quarterly business report to your shareholders, but our shareholders are all of our employees. So we had takes quite a bit of work to report on last month, and usually we have an in-person meeting, but with everything happening yesterday, we just couldn't do that. So what else? We've got a
So
company
we have,
picnic.
yes, huge
First,
company picnic, first ever,
yep,
like
this Sunday.
massive undertaking. It's going
Tons
to
of
be the
fun.
most. My son is so excited about going. There's like that slip and slide that's 300 something feet long, and he has been prepping his maneuvers on that slip and slide. I can't wait.
It's going to be a great time.
It's going to be so much fun.
And we've got
Gosh,
new
what
people attending too. It's up to 200 now. So the RSVP
that's
was expected today.
I think that it just adds to the pressure of how awesome we have to make this. Like
Yes, it's the first
it's so
one.
cool. It really is. It's going to be great.
All right. And then, not to bury the lead, but do you want to talk about what we did yesterday and the day before?
We can we should. So as far as milestones go, Instafab as a whole had a major milestone. It we since 1987 have been kind of a smaller scale. I don't know if you want to call it a mom and pop shop, but we graduated this week. We graduated in regards to American Institute of Steel Construction certification, which will allow us to do all the big projects that our competitors are doing, our partners are doing, and some of the big things that are making this whole area grow. And now we're able to be a part of that. So it's a really exciting time.
Yeah. And so that brings us to our guest today, Sean Nelson, who's our quality control manager and a certified welding inspector. And he has been instrumental in helping us launch and implement the certification. So he'll tell us more. But not only does he have that impressive background in those titles, but he was also named Employee of the Month last month. So we're pretty proud to have him on our team.
Yeah, welcome, Sean. Nice to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
So Sean has been prepping. I think you started with us in in February of 23, correct? So since Sean's arrival with us, he's been working us through the AISC process. And in regards to um, becoming certified to do this type of work, we are we had to get a number of things in place. So, first and foremost, we had to get our quality management system, which is kind of an organized method to do part of um, each part of work involved in the certification. So, we have welding procedures. We have how we track maintenance, how we are organized as a company. But Sean has put together this entire program and successfully got us through this major process, and now I believe that we're on the downhill side of this. We're going to get the certification here in a few weeks, the actual the certification card. But according to the auditor, we're going to get the certification, and I would say Sean's relentless efforts to make that happen are why we're where we're at.
Yeah, congratulations, Sean.
Thank you. It's a team effort though. So I just
Well,
I
I
typed.
I appreciate the canned response. You sound like Patrick Mahomes right now. It was a team effort. I threw 22 touchdowns, but it was the team that got it done. um, but I think your hard work and dedication is what got us there. And I think just to kind of go through what some of that process entails, maybe walk us through how you would initiate kind of compiling a quality management system. What goes into that whole package?
So it starts off with this fancy little yellow book called they call it the standard. It's the basis for all the rules. It's compiled of just like a general steel industry. And when I say steel industry, production lines or anything like that, I'm thinking buildings, bridges, dams, stuff like that. So the book has several sections. And you just got to figure out what you're using. Like us, for example, we're just building. That's what we were going after. So I only had to focus on that. But in that, there are 18 different items with, it felt like, infinite pages of stuff. And you gotta follow these rules, and you gotta write things down, procedures in a certain way to appease AISC or QMC, the company that does the main auditing.
So Sean, sitting in this process with you in the audit, of course, looking at all the effort that you put into this, writing a procedure per se is not something that just anybody off the street I think can do. You really have to deep dive into what goes in step by step, how we're going to do this, to go through and see the procedures that were written for every aspect of how we would run a project. For instance, it was pretty spectacular to see all of that come together. And I think even the auditor was a little bit shocked, and he mentioned how great the quality was and how organized everything was. He's like, this is not something you would see from a first time AISC applicant. And so that was pretty impressive. I thought that was cool. I mean, for me, that was a huge pat on the back for you. I mean, to have somebody that's been doing audits for what he says he's been doing them since 2017. He audits however many 50 or 100 companies a year, and to come in here and say, "Gosh, Instafab, man, you have your stuff together. It's pretty impressive." So great job, man.
Agreed.
So on the training front, to get starting like with the shop employees, how do you prepare them for like the questions an auditor might have for them?
So I kind of tried to come in gently. I basically started breaking them in back in February, just kind of gave them, for our shop particularly, gave them, hey, I'm Sean. This is my background. This is what I'm trying to do for us as a company. And so in each month or so after, I would bring it up again, just kind of because everybody gets nervous. Auditors, this guy's looking over my shoulder. They get nervous when I do it. So, some foreign guy, let's ease him into it. And I did my best the last week or so to kind of do the warnings and this is stuff he's after. But you come down to that moment of, sweat running down your face. It doesn't always go as planned, but it works itself out.
Yeah, from what I gathered, it sounded like the interviews that he did with our shop personnel, there was a couple people that did really well, and he mentioned well, one of our employees by name. I'll leave her out of it, but she's fantastic. One of our very vocal, passionate people. But he said she did great, and she understood just about everything he asked, which is fantastic. And then he had obviously another employee who was just deer in the headlights. Oh my God, what is this guy doing here?
It made me start to
And so
sweat. So
I did the same thing. I'm like, oh my gosh, is this a deal breaker? Are we hosed? You killed it with everything else, and
Yeah.
he was able to overcome that one person who probably wasn't here the day that you were doing the bulk of the training.
Well, and I think even still, like our team didn't have these processes in place. The things that you've developed in the quality management system, these are new skills in even in processes that they're still getting underway too. So I can see being nervous. It's not something they've done for 13 years. It's something that they've been doing for a matter of months. And having that nerve, that makes sense. Sean, what would you say is like the key elements of like the program that you've implemented, and how, like, what are the top ways it's positively impacted like our overall operations?
the key element is definitely teamwork. It takes a village, right? So everybody's got to be willing to do these daunting tasks. You use air quotes a lot because daunting is per person, tracking heat numbers, never done that. So it's the repetitive reminder. And I thought I was doing okay and I slacked for a little bit. And I went out there to a new guy on the saw and he wasn't doing it. And I'm like, hey man, so we walked through it. Now there's a procedure on the saw. Um, so that would be a teamwork, and it's excited. They're ready for the next step. And some of these guys that when I came in, that I was like, this guy might be hard to push in the right direction, but that one guy is the one that is pushing for some of his other guys. It's going to be great for us. It opened this huge door, and yeah,
They're seeing that
I,
value.
it is. And I can understand their struggle because it seems, from where we were having to, and I don't want to say having to like it's a chore, but almost like a necessity to just be better at documentation, be better at understanding what we're doing and tracking and being more organized. And I know for some of our folks, especially the folks in purchasing and like document control, this has added quite a bit more work to their plate.
definitely.
And that just kind of goes with the territory. It's part of being organized and understanding how important it is to be able to look back, identify something that we've used, or identify something that's been installed into a building or a project, and trace that thing back to its origin, go all the way back to the mill, find out where that piece was made, what chemicals were used to go in that, if it was um, they can go through the process, how much scrap was involved, if it came from overseas or if it was domestic. All those things come from that traceability. And now that we're doing that, it's pretty incredible. It's giving us a lot more transparency through our project, and I think that we can provide a heck of a lot more value to our customer because of it.
Well, even from a reliability standpoint, right? From a customer standpoint, or even us as we grow. Like this puts the foundation in place that we need to know that it's going to be executed the same way every time, and it's the way to control it so that we can continue to grow.
I am excited to hear how they're embracing this because I heard the same. Obviously, change is tough, and it seems like it may be something we don't need, but they, I don't think everybody has that forward thinking vision. They can't see what this is necessarily going to do for us in its entirety, and what it allows us to look at as far as project scope, where we can go as a company, and what it can do for us as far as alleviating pressure, as far even down to project management, right? So we've been known to take on just about any project we get our hands on. We're doing, 300 plus projects a year, which is putting a huge burden on our project team. Whereas AISC gives us the opportunity to look at projects with a little bit more revenue potential, and then that in turn lessens the volume of actual project workload that they have when they can focus more on a smaller amount of projects versus a large number of smaller projects, which require, in my opinion, the same amount of management. So it's going to actually ease the burden, I think, on our project team, and we'll be able to perform better because of it.
So, knowing that that tension existed within the company, that they were really opposed to AISC certification, like Sean Nelson, it'd be really good to hear from you. Like, what was your method and your approach in getting to them to really transform that impression and that perspective and embrace it?
Oh yeah, and the tension is definitely there. I mean, it's it's there. It's it's a lot better. A game plan, except for just uh, my introduction was kind of my game plan. You know, this is me. This is what I like to do. Uh, I like this role. Starting to get to know people, and then them getting to know me. And it didn't take long before I got I don't want to say respect, but it was like, hey, this guy's not just some guy. You know, he's been welding for 20 years. He's been QC for 5 years, CWI for going on 4 years. You know, he's here for us. He's here to help us. So it's just making those bonds with everybody from helpers to project managers.
Building some credibility, it sounds like.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Part of that process, it like you've kind of implanted a couple of assistants into the mix. So how do you manage those guys, and how do they support this whole AISC front, this whole program?
I see one of them more than that. He works the same shift as me. I see the second guy on Friday. I spend about an hour with him in the morning, going through stuff. They are both very capable gentlemen. One is a CAWI, so he started the process. He just has to
What
finish the
what, what
process.
is it? Just for the people listening, what is a CAWI?
A certified associate welding inspector. So
Awesome.
it really
I'm
makes
pretty
me feel
sure
good
that
that
I'm pretty
I
sure
have.
that I've been saying that wrong. Like I think I said certified assistant, so associate is the proper term.
Yeah, but I have an assistant, so but both those guys are just very capable. And the one guy that works the first half of the week, he's not really interested in the CWI thing, but he knows a lot of the rules. He just doesn't want that formality. So I kind of they're pretty easy to manage. I've worked with one of them for 4 plus years, and the other one for 3. Yeah, just about 3 years. They know me. I know them. We get along well. They know what I like and what I'm after. And if it's really something that they're questioning, like, I think we can do it like this, but let's go talk to Sean. And so I'll ask them, what do you think we should do? And then I listen to them and let's figure it out. Yeah, if that's a good plan, let's let's do that. If I think it needs to be tweaked a little bit, we'll do that. They're usually pretty good on their own.
I was going to ask what you think their level of understanding is in regards to our new certification. Do you think that they understand um, the quality management system and what that means and how they need to operate in order for us to be in compliance with that in our certification?
Yeah, they both come from AIC shop, so they got an understanding. And then the older gentleman, he's been through several AIC shops, so they got an understanding and they have access to our QMS. And I probably once a week, I'm like, hey, you should probably check this out. Or if I see one of them having some downtime, I'll go to the computer and I'll pull up a folder and I'm like, you got a little free time, feel free to read this. Or there's some AISC code that I was looking into for someone or something, and it's like a little body of knowledge. And so I'll print that out and I'll give it to them so they can have the same understanding as me. I don't want them to be less than me at all. I want them to be better than me, and whatever I can do to help that and help their understanding of our program.
Yeah, I think leadership, training, continuous improvement, I mean, it sounds like it really is a strong indicator of the effectiveness of this program. So, I mean, I think you're doing a really outstanding job with that.
Agreed.
Diving into some like the technical aspects of, AISC certification and quality control and such, can you tell us a little bit like what's the distinction between the roles of a CWI versus a quality control manager?
CWI. I mean, it's a must. I think every company should have one. And over the last couple of days, we kind of found out that a lot of companies don't, and it kind of shocked me. As
Yeah,
I
the auditor mentioned that
Yeah,
there's most of the companies that he visits don't have a CWI on staff, and that having your own certified welding inspector is kind of above and beyond what um, the other folks that he's doing the audits with have in their toolbox. So that's a huge step forward for us. So
What value would you say it adds for us as compared to shops that don't have it?
when a third party, someone from outside source comes in and says, "Hey, do that because I said so." There's someone in my position as a CWI that knows enough to say, "I don't think that criteria meets." So we get this fancy book and fight a battle. And once they understand that you guys are on the same page, hey, I'm a CWI, you're a CWI, it's more easy to navigate.
it's almost like a brotherhood or something, right? Like
Yeah, definitely.
you guys all got this like this cool shiny star badge. You're like the sheriff in town, and then you got
Yeah,
one sheriff with a set of laws, and you're like, I got the same set of laws, but I see them a different way.
I
yeah,
bet it adds a lot of color too, being able to anticipate like what they might say before they ever show up too, so we can correct it.
yeah, and it's being aware of some of the guidelines and the plethora of books that are on my bookshelf. Whereas someone that didn't have a CWI, I mean, they got a little bit hard time navigating the books, and they just might do what someone else told them to do.
I can tell you from experience, my own personal experience trying to navigate that book, I find myself getting lost because there's so many different ways to deal with the same thing, if that makes
Yes.
sense. Like it says, do this way, but in the book, there's three different chapters on how you do it that way, and they all say to do it a different way. So I guess from the lay person like me that doesn't fully understand what it means or how to interpret that, it's nice to have somebody on staff that can help me understand which one of those three ways applies to what I'm actually looking at, and kind of guide me through the process because I don't know how you guys do it.
Connect the dots. That makes
Yeah,
sense.
it literally is connecting the dots. Like, oh, this means you do it this way. The color red is red only if there is
It
green and
says it's
blue
blue.
in it. What I don't know. It's crazy. It's hard to understand for me. But
Well, I
we'll
mean,
get
and
it back.
there is a ton of information involved with the AISCs, like the standards. Sean Nelson, for our listeners, maybe you can tell us a little bit about like how we receive the latest AISC guidelines, and then from your take, like how do you make sure that we as Instafab will be remaining in compliance with those kind of evolving standards?
I I check once a month, if not more. I'm checking AWS for anything that they're putting through. I can't remember. It was like a consumer. Hey, we're getting ready to send this out, but you guys get to look at it and kind of redline it, and we'll go from there. So I'm constantly trying to keep up on that stuff.
They give you a preview. That's
Checking.
great.
What's that?
They give you a preview. That's really great.
Yes, yes, they do. You can download their red lines before they come out.
So,
So
am I understanding, like, are they almost asking for like your interpretation or like your feedback? Like, hey, we're thinking
my
about
feedback,
doing this.
basically, yeah,
Do you have any ideas on the subject? So they literally ask you for feedback and understanding. Does this make sense? Would you do this?
That's more
yes.
collaborative than I would have expected. Yeah.
Seriously, like I had no
AISC
idea. That's cool.
AIC does it more than AWS, but AWS does do it. Whereas AIC, you can actually download the red line and look at it and do as you will with it until the new one comes out.
So, is there an opportunity for you to provide feedback to AISC? Do you get to say, "Hey, if I interpret it this way, is this going to fly when the new edition comes out?"
There are channels to do that. I just always seem to be a day late and a dollar short. And so I've never been involved with that, but there are, and you can get on the board, or it's not a board, it's
It's like a panel more so, right?
that is a
Yeah,
silly word to forget. But yes.
It's Friday. Don't even worry about it.
Yeah.
yeah.
How do you strike a balance between efficiency, like maximizing efficiency in our production team, and yet still maintain the highest quality standards? That's got to be a challenge.
It is. It is a balancing act, and you got to be efficient. You got to have quality or quantity, and this was actually pushed on me a lot by that guy in the red shirt right there a few years ago. He's like, "Yeah, speed is great, but if we have to keep reworking it, then it's not efficient." So that's what I try to go by out there in the shop. Let's get the quality. Let's
It's like the
make
slow
sure.
down, the speed up process, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Like
So
doing it right
train
the first time. Yeah, doing it right the first time actually speeds you up versus doing it twice or doing it three times.
totally makes
Yes.
sense.
But yeah, I mean, I can appreciate the heck out of that. Obviously, I'm one of the drivers of that program myself. So, from a quality standpoint, how do we provide what our customer is asking for, continue to increase our throughput, but not overdoing it? So, say a customer is buying a product for us and it's a Ford Taurus, and from a quality standpoint, we're asking our folks to create a Ferrari. And then from a financial standpoint, you like, we want to provide the tourists that they paid for, but maybe exceed that expectation a little bit, but not necessarily go as far as a Ferrari, so we can still continue our throughput.
And for our listeners, we don't actually produce vehicles. He's using it as an example.
Sorry, sorry about that. I've been trying not to go down the analogy road, and
I think it's training and one-on-one time, walking by somebody, seeing something out of the corner of your eye. I think that could be done a little different. My thing is tricks. I like little tricks. layout tricks, welding tricks. Instead of, if you got a hole that you're laying out, you got to put it in a certain place. Why are we putting a triangle or a box all the way around it and then a line? I know where the center of that hole is. Let's just put a line, just one little spot right under the hole. And that actually, you'd be surprised at how much time that takes off a layout. And if you got someone that doing that on every hole, that is taking an astronomical amount of time in my case. And
What
then
about oh, go ahead, Sean. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I was thinking about from a production and quality standpoint, what happens when say you have a welding procedure on a typical fillet weld, right? And what's happening with folks that are either above or below those parameters of that procedure, and how does that affect one, their quality, and then their production, their throughput?
right, so if it was lower than the optimum running voltage and amperage, now you got time involved. And let's say you're welding for a minute. Now that time has probably jumped up to 2 minutes because you slow down. You slow down the voltage, you slow down the wire speed. You slow down the wire speed, you have more chance for undercut if you're trying to move too fast. So that's a quality defect. You got cold roll. I don't know how else to explain it, but when the wire looks like, or the filler metal looks like a worm, I like to say it looks like a worm, you know?
It's kind of
So,
ropey.
yeah. So that is a weld defect. So it's something that's got to be fixed. Now, if your voltage is too high and you're trying to keep up with that high voltage, there's a good chance for undercut, which is where the two metals melt away from each other, basically.
So the voltage makes it so it can't fuse properly and fill all the little gaps that's created by the voltage, right?
Correct.
So they believe that they're going faster. I'm above the parameters. I'm running down this weld, but in hindsight, they have to go back and fix a lot of defects again.
Yeah, and you got to undersize weld because you're running too fast. So you got to put more passes on it, and that's a quality and efficiency thing.
So
They
what
kind
what
of
goes in what goes into developing a welding procedure? What do you have to do to figure out how those parameters are even decided? I mean, what like I know you have a low and a high, but how do you know if it's too low? How do you know if it's too high? What do you have to do to get to that point?
you go to that fancy red book that I showed you, and they have a little cheat sheet in the back that says what is required of AWS to put on a WPS. Make sure that you have all those headers for what they want, and they're blank at that point. And then I'll go to the whatever filler metal that we're making the welding procedure for. Most of the filler metal, there's a chart for the different sizes of wire, optimal running temperature or voltage. And so let's say the Select Arc 720 for 1/16 wire. It has 4 different areas that it says you can weld right here, but it welds better here and here. And this high voltage is doable. We don't suggest it type thing, but it will meet all the CVN testing, tension test, CVN being Sharpie, V notch, Sharpie.
That that one seems to be the most challenging word for people because of the way it's spelled. I believe it's just pronounced Sharpie, like the Sharpie pen, but they spell it with a CH, and people get like they over exaggerate the CH. Like it's got to be like you said, the Sharpie, or they turn it into like another language. It's kind of I think it's funny, but but it happens everywhere, so don't
Oh
feel
yeah,
bad.
I make sure to accentuate the CH.
That's good.
Sean, how do you handle like quality related challenges that pop up in our projects that we didn't expect to come, and like, still make sure that the project doesn't get off schedule?
It's communication. If I find something or one of my guys finds something, it's this is what I found, and it's different than what it says we're supposed to do. So it's talk to the PM, see what they think, and then they talk to the GC, the general contractor, see what they think. A lot of times it'll come down to an RFI, request for information, and then we gotta get owner or engineer approval. But it's really communication's key. Communication's everything.
How often do you think that happens? So you think there's those occasions where, um, and I guess not only how often does it happen, but is it generally just your guys that find it, or do you think that our people are trained well enough in the shop that they're finding those things now too?
Oh yeah, our lead men and welders, fitters, they're definitely aware of oddities on drawing. Let's say this column, for instance, has a cap plate on it, and it says, well, 3 sides inside. The column next to him, a different guy is welding, says fillet weld 2 sides, CJP 1 side. What do we do? Well, what does structurals say? So we reverted. This is a actual something that happened. We reverted to the structurals, and oh well, this says CJP on the web. So
So you had to do a complete joint penetration weld on that particular plate, but you were able to go back to structural drawings and find the deficiency, I guess, with our detailing
yep, definitely.
and get that corrected. Nice. So that one didn't have to go back to our customer for review.
No, because it was made by them, so didn't need to get permission for that one.
Good. I think it's fantastic though that they're able to identify. You have a similar piece in two different places, and they're able to communicate together and figure out that um, these two things are very similar. Why aren't we doing the same thing on them? So they raise their hand or raise the red flag and say, I think something's wrong here. Let's
Yeah, and then chain of command.
I think I love the fact that they're empowered enough to not just roll with it and to run that up the flagpole and figure it out versus just but the drawing says this is the way we've always done it. Do whatever the drawing says. Don't worry if it doesn't make sense. So I just appreciate that the people feel empowered enough to step up and say something when it doesn't feel right.
I think there might have been
Yeah,
a time too where that could have happened, like you were describing, Sean. Like there's kind of apathy there. But I think implementing a program like this, we're really focused on quality and making that at the forefront of our whole company. I think people do come alive, and that is something that they're paying attention to now. Any like words of advice
If
or
somebody, say a random listener, somebody that's not Instafab is listening to this, in Florida, what could they do to follow in your footsteps?
yeah, what would be your advice?
read, do some reading, be familiar with the AISC books in the standard, and it doesn't hurt to know people who are AISC certified, because then you can ask questions. Hey, I'm going for D15 bridge cert, and I'm reading this way. So reach out on your phone and hey, what do you think about this? And what do I need to make that better? So it's helpful to be familiar with some of the standards and have friends.
Good
Yeah,
tip.
it
I
sounds
think,
like you have a strong network, so that's awesome.
yeah. And I think our takeaway too is always make sure you get tracking when you send in payment for your application.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Sometimes they get lost, the checks, and you want to be
Yes.
able to track them down.
our check got lost, so I mean that's and come to find out, after they told us we forgot to pay them, they had already cashed our check.
Oh, I didn't hear about that part.
Oh
Yes,
Oh,
yeah.
that's excellent.
yeah, they cashed our check, and they were already out partying on that money, and
Yeah.
um, the certification that makes you like be perfect with documentation. Those folks lost their check, and
Yeah,
Well,
documented it very well.
same could be
sorry,
said.
AISC folks.
Yeah.
We all make mistakes. It's fine.
Yeah, we're all in the same boat.
Well, Sean, thank you so much for coming on tonight and kind of telling us a little bit about, this process and sharing some of your wisdom and experience with us.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks for your time, buddy.
Am I frozen?
No, you're not. You're good.
No. Okay, cool. We're your co-host or
I'm not sure what the basketball thing on your head was.
quality manager.
What do we do?
I don't even know where to start.
I check. That's okay.
Sean, how do you handle like quality related challenges?
That's okay. Daunting tasks. You can use air quotes a lot. Get this fancy book. Sharpie, V-notch. Sharpie.
I believe it's just pronounced Sharpie, like the Sharpie pen, but they spell it with a CH. They turn it into like another language.
I make sure to accentuate the CH.
That's good.
That's okay.